Well, good morning, everybody. How we doing? Spectre here on this 24th day of December, Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas to each of you joining the broadcast here this morning. A little bit of news to get through here this morning. The markets are closed on the day here for the holiday, but there's still plenty of stuff to try and get through. Talk a little bit about business investments, things of that nature from yesterday. New home sales net report out yesterday. Used car prices net still on the rise. 100 billion stolen from the PPP relief funds and that came out over the course of the COVID business here. Amazon in the news still. We'll talk a little bit about that. Life expectancy on the drop. And of course, flight cancellations with Christmas upon us and some rolling blackouts and things of that nature going on across Europe. So, yeah, we're going to get into all that and a little bit more here on the broadcast here this morning. So stick around. I'll be right back. Hey, everybody, Spectre here. Just wanted to give a big thank you to all you guys who continue to support my work. Jump in, day out on the streams, support all the various pieces I put out, etc., etc. And in doing so, I figured what the heck, we'll put some merch out there if you guys wish to continue to support and help defray some of the costs of streaming, which many of you guys know many of us incur. Got a handful of shirts and that here. Spectre Does News. We got the Realize, Real Lies shirt and that you hear on my PSA periodically. And of course the No BS insignia from the show I do over on the 5x5 channel, all of which you can get for the low price of $19.99. Aside from that, you can get the Let's Go Brandon hashtag FJB shirt as well in a variety of colors. And I've recently added the hoodies in a variety of colors you can get right there as well. And last but not least, you can grab yourself a No BS shirt and the Zip Up hoodie as well. If you don't want any articles of clothing, well, you can grab yourself a mug or a 20-ounce water tumbler if you wish. Your choice. And of course, as always, just want to thank you, the listeners, the audience, those who are in chat day in, day out. Thank you for your continued support. All right into it we go here this morning. Weather-wise, we're not looking too bad, depending on where you're at in the country here this morning. If you're out west, well, chances are you may be getting some rain, I suppose, if you're in California, anywhere south, I would say, and probably across the southwest. However, if you're in the northwest, on the other hand, chances are you're probably going to be getting some snow. Also, if you're down in the southeast, around Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina area, you may be seeing some showers up in those parts. And of course, in the upper parts of Minnesota, we're seeing some activity that way. And of course, New York, New Jersey area, same thing. Looking at the old precip cast here, you can kind of see the smattering of stuff coming across. And of course, most of this is rain until, you get right about there. And then we get some pockets of snow and that where it looks like you guys are going to get a couple inches. And of course, all you guys up in the Northwest, Oregon, Washington way, yeah, chances are you're probably going to see some snow. You guys up in the northern parts of Minnesota, the same. And perhaps you guys out in the Northeast may see a little bit of a dusting as well. However, the rest of us here, perhaps in this little pocket right here, we're going to see some fairly seasonable weather, and I'm not going to complain too much in that we may see 50, 60 degrees here between today and tomorrow. And yeah, not too bad. No snow, no rain in the forecast, so all is well. And as mentioned here this morning, no rundown through the market as the markets are indeed closed here for the holiday. But that being said, there is still plenty to get to. The business investment came out yesterday. The proxy weakens in November and durable goods orders buoyed by big Boeing buy. This is a dark cloud hid over today's durable goods data. While the headline print was solid, the value of core capital goods orders, a proxy for business investment in equipment that excludes aircraft and military hardware, dropped 0.1% in preliminary November data, following an upperly revised 0.9% increase in October. This is only the second month-over-month drop since the COVID lockdown crisis. And there they depict that graphically there. The last time that we saw this was, earlier part of this year, probably back around February, March time frame. Says the silver lining, as we noted above, was that orders for all durable goods, items meant to last at least 3 years, surged 2.5% from the prior month, reflecting a sharp rise in aircraft orders. This is the biggest jump since May, and there we see that depicted graphically as well. The durable data showed bookings for commercial aircraft increased 34%. Boeing Company reported 109 orders in November, up from 10 a month earlier. The government data on aircraft orders don't always align exactly with the corporate figures. And also, war is good as defense orders jumped 16% month over month. And there we see that. Says orders for motor vehicles rose 1%. Durable goods orders excluding transportation equipment increased 0.8%. Outside of the more volatile transportation categories, report was mixed. Bookings for metals and communications equipment increased, while those for machinery, electrical equipment, and computers eased. Finally, we note that unfilled orders for manufactured durable goods, a measure of backlogs, rose 0.7% to the highest since February of last year. And there we see that. Says, so the supply chain crisis is not over then? Well, I don't know. Maybe you guys happen to see the presser or some stories out there that Biden seems to have thought in his delusions that he solved the problem, but I think we know just a little bit better than that on the supply chain issues as we cover that quite well here on the channel. And again, he's delusional. Outside of that, new home sales jumped to 7-month high despite massive downward revisions. Says having rebounded from the mid-year bloodbath, analysts expect new home sales to accelerate further in November. They were right, but there were huge historical revisions that left the final SAR a big miss. New home sales rose 12.4% month over month, smashing the 3.4% up month over month expected. But that was because October was revised down to 0.4% month over month to down 8.4%. 8% drop. So they got it completely wrong when these numbers came out in October. And yeah, bad news. And so we'll have to see whether or not this even is really worth spit at the end of the day. And I'm sure perhaps we may see that that too may get revised down. Who knows? So the series saw huge downward revisions over the past 3 months. Here we see the new home sales prior versus revised. So again, we can probably take these numbers for what they're worth at the end of the day. New home sales remain down 14% year over year. This left the SAR at 744,000, well below the 770,000 expected. But thanks to the huge revisions, still the highest since April of 2021. Median and average home prices soared to a new record high. And I believe we just talked about that the other day. I think we're up north of the 370 median mark and that we talked about the other day. Looks like we're pushing north of 400,000. And yeah, obviously we can see where the divergence in that started to take place. Oh, it looks like perhaps back in the 2016-17 timeframe. New home sales are in red there, and the median new home sales price in the green color there. So, says for context, home prices are rising 3 to 4 times faster than during the prior housing bubble. Time to double turbo that taper, Mr. Powell? Yeah, mind you, the Fed is buying or had been buying as part of their 120 billion a month, $40 billion worth of mortgage-backed securities. So all those loans and that you guys go get for homes and everything else, all that stuff gets bundled up and turned into a mortgage-backed security. And the Fed gobbles it right up. So, we'll have to see how that shakes out, but aside from that, we've talked quite a bit about used car prices net going through the roof, and are still going through the roof. So as used car prices hit another record high, here's what Goldman thinks happens next. Says another month, another record. See the prior records here and here. New data shows used car prices continued to soar in the first half of December, suggesting inflation has been anything but transitory. And of course, Jay Powell has finally decided to retire the term transitory. Thank God. Says the Manheim Index, the most recognized wholesale used vehicle price index by financial and economic analysts, reported that the wholesale used car index rose 3.1% in the first 15 days of December compared to November. The overall index has jumped a mind-boggling 48.9% from December of 2020. So think of that. If you were to go to a car lot and wanted to buy a car last year and it's still sitting there today, a year later, you're going to pay almost 50% more for that sucker than if you would have bought it a year ago. It's nuts. But aside from that, it says on a year-over-year basis, all major market segments saw seasonally adjusted price gains through the first 15 days of December. Pickups had the smallest year-over-year gains, vans had the largest at 63.3%, and both non-luxury car segments outpaced the overall industry in seasonally adjusted price growth. Compared to November, SUVs and vans had the smallest growth in the first half of December, while compact cars had the largest gain, according to the report. And there we see the mid-December 2021 index, and that kind of broken out month over month. And probably, I would imagine, all the various years of cars, etc., etc. It says heading into the new year, Goldman Sachs chief economist John Hatzius provided clients with an outlook on the automobile market. He expects further increases in new and used car prices during the first quarter of 2022, but outlines new car prices peak in quarter 2 versus quarter 1 previously, and used car prices peak in quarter 1 versus December of this year previously. So apparently the scale keeps sliding. Hatzius said cooling down auto markets will be a challenging task. Port congestion remains a significant problem and has only marginally improved in recent months. He said new outbreaks of the Omicron variant is a major risk to foreign automotive and semiconductor factories, could derail the rebound in car production. KPMG Global Head of Automotive Gary Silberg is in similar agreement with Hatzius and believes a turning point in vehicle prices is nearing. He told Automotive News that vehicle supply and demand would achieve equilibrium sometime between October of this year and 2023, but used vehicle prices would begin to fall before that point. In every scenario, we expect the market to anticipate the turnaround in the new car supply situation ahead of time and begin repricing used cars before new car lots are full and used car demand returns to normal. Normal? Anything but normal. Is there such a thing as returning to normal? In other words, a 20 to 30% plunge in used vehicle prices is in the cards, KPMG wrote in a note. Relief for car shoppers is coming, but it might be in the second half of 2022. And don't expect prices to return to pre-2019 levels. So on one hand, they say don't return to pre-pandemic levels, but the note says that they expect demand to return to normal. I don't know, a little bit of a head scratcher there, I suppose, but nonetheless, if you're in the market for a used car, I wonder if that differentiates between probably typical owners selling them out in their front lawns versus going to a lot, for example. I don't know. But nonetheless, capitalize on it while you can, because it probably isn't going to abate anytime soon. Aside from that, more than $100 billion was stolen from the Pandemic Relief Fund, Secret Service says. And gee, color me shocked on that one. Let's see, when we kick out billions and billions of dollars, what are the chances, folks? You think there might be some folks that might want to try and put their greedy paws on it that probably otherwise shouldn't? How many cases have we covered over the past year since this rolled out of people on the take that shouldn't have? Says when it comes to government waste, we've seen some pretty big numbers of recent, including $80 billion worth of military equipment that was left behind in Afghanistan just months ago. But trumping that number, according to the Secret Service, is more than $100 billion that was stolen from pandemic relief funds. The $100 billion figure is at a minimum, a new report from AP says. The estimate is based on Secret Service cases and data from the Labor Department and the Small Business Administration, the report says. The sheer size of the $3.4 trillion disbursed is enticing to the criminals, said Roy Dotson, the agency's national scamdemic fraud recovery coordinator. Says a majority of the figure comes from unemployment fraud, the report notes. About $87 billion in benefits may have been paid out improperly, the Labor Department says. How does one exactly make an improper payment? If the paperwork looks good, does nobody check this stuff? Where's the fact checkers for those guys? I mean, dear God, we got fact checkers for Facebook, for Twitter, and everybody else, but when it comes to things like handing out money, you put a name on it and filled a couple of the boxes out. Good enough. Here's your check. So far, the Secret Service has seized over $1.2 billion while investigating unemployment insurance and loan fraud. It has returned more than $2.3 billion in fraudulently obtained funds and has more than 900 active criminal investigations into the scamdemic fraud. Can you defraud a fraud? I don't know. Asking for a friend. Says 100 people have been arrested as a result of their investigation so far, the report notes. Meanwhile, the DOJ has seized more than $75 million in cash from improper PPP loans. It continues. And Dotson concluded, telling AP, "Can we stop fraud? Will we? No, but I think we can definitely prosecute those that need to be prosecuted, and we can do our best to recover as much fraudulent, scamdemic funds that we can." So, when it comes to $100 billion in fraud, they're probably going to only recover some chump change out of it, only a few million here and there. But perhaps we'll see some more updates in regards to the more than 900 active criminal investigations. So stay tuned in that regard. Outside of that, Amazon's only warehouse in New York City launches plan to unionize all Amazon workers everywhere. Mind you, we talked a little bit about Amazon getting some bad publicity here as of late, but think back here to the beginning of the year where Amazon had tried to unionize down in Alabama. And then, of course, he had the National Labor Relations Board crying foul. They were trying to interfere, and we're going to try and put it to a vote yet again. And now we get this. Says progressives like AOC already succeeded in stopping Amazon from opening one of two new coastal headquarters in Queens, mostly because the company retaliated against New York politicians who backed her push to cancel billions in Amazon tax credits with blatant misinformation, like claiming the company was essentially being subsidized by state tax revenues. And that's not how tax incentives work. I thought AOC went to school for economics, didn't she? Aside from tossing drinks and whatnot in bars, I don't know. But where are all the city's champagne socialists now that workers at a Staten Island Amazon distribution hub, the company's only one in New York City, are organizing the latest attempt to unionize an Amazon warehouse? While workers in Bessemer, Alabama, are gearing up for a revote now that one has been approved by the National Labor Relations Board. To wit, the New York Times reported Thursday that 2,500 workers at JFK 8, the Staten Island facility, had signed a petition to unionize and filed it with the National Labor Relations Board. And instead of joining the Teamsters, like the workers in Bessemer are trying to do, workers at JFK 8 are pushing to form their own union, that they hope will be unique for Amazon, eventually attracting workers at other warehouses to join and start up their own labor relations entity. The group first filed a petition in October to unionize in October, but withdrew it quickly after. Kayla Blado, the press secretary for the agency, confirmed that the group had filed a petition. The effort is being organized by current and former Amazon workers aiming to form a new independent union called the Amazon Labor Union. It focuses on Amazon's only fulfillment center in New York City, known as JFK 8, which employs more than 5,000 people. Amazon labor union had initially filed for an election in October at JFK 8 and 3 nearby Amazon buildings, but it withdrew the petition several weeks later after organizers said the labor board told them they did not have enough signatures of current employees to proceed. The New York Times reported the turnover at the company was about 150% a year even before the scamdemic increased attrition. Says by now focusing just on JFK 8, we are taking a different approach, said Christian Smalls, a former Amazon worker who is leading the effort. We are hoping that not only do we have more than enough, but we have more than enough that are still employed. Now, the news comes shortly before reports Amazon had reached an agreement with the NLRB about internal corporate communications that will supposedly make it easier for Amazon workers to organize. An Amazon rep didn't immediately respond to the Wall Street Journal's request for comment on the agreement. Amazon says he doesn't believe the union organizers have enough signatures to meet the NLRB's threshold, which is 30% of workers. And in this case, JFK 8 is said to have more than 5,000 employees. Petitions need at least 30% of workers to demonstrate sufficient interest in holding an election, though typically unions file with far more. Kelly Nantel, a spokeswoman for Amazon, said in a statement that the company's focus remains on listening directly to our employees and continuously improving on their behalf. She said Amazon continued to doubt the organizers had enough signatures to merit an election. Turnover at the JFK 8 warehouse has reportedly risen to 150% per the New York Times, and that was before the scamdemic drove up attrition numbers. We now wait to see whether CEO Andy Jassy will continue pushing Jeff Bezos' message of claiming the firm cares deeply about workers' interests and welfare, while still very unprogressively opposing unionization, sometimes even using underhanded methods and tactics. Mind you, this on the heels of what we just witnessed through the tornadoes ripping through the southern part of the state here in Illinois, Edwardsville, their facility. And of course, we covered the article the other day that the Amazon drivers were told to shelter in place, do not come back, deliver the things anyway. And of course, we know the rest of the story. So please spare us in this caring deeply about workers' business. But the other side of that is, how many more unions do we really need at the end of the day? If you look at all this business with the Build Back Better $1 trillion boondoggle they'd love to be able to push through, which is currently on hold, most of that stuff, if you read through the legislation, is geared toward union jobs. So you can kind of see where this is headed. Obviously, a lot of political donors and that would help fatten the coffers of the Dems. Aside from that, life expectancy in 2020 fell 2.3% to 77 years. Does this justify the COVID panic? Interesting piece by Ryan McMacken out of the Mises Institute. It says, according to a new report released Wednesday by the Centers for Disease Control, the life expectancy at birth in the United States fell to 77.0 years in 2020, falling from 2019's life expectancy of 78.8 years. The report also noted an increase of mortality, with age-adjusted mortality in the U.S. rising from 715.2 per 100,000 in 2019 to 836.4 per 100,000 in 2020. Media reporting on the CDC's report provide a variety of statistics on one-year percentage changes, no doubt with an eye toward maximizing the perceived effect of COVID-19 on American health. But what are the trends when we look at these numbers in the larger context? That is, just how much has life expectancy and mortality swung from what we've experienced in recent decades? A closer look at these numbers suggests that COVID does not exactly represent an epochal change in life expectancy, health, or health care. Moreover, the new numbers also help illustrate how efforts by journalists earlier this year to describe COVID-19 as deadlier than the 1918 flu were wildly off the mark. And isn't that just like the Mockingbird media to cherry pick data? It doesn't matter if it's climate change or perhaps talking about, gas prices. And mind you, they shifted the scale on the y axis to make it look like this precipitous drop when in fact it was only pennies. But this is the type of thing we need to delve into more regularly to understand the context of it and look at the trends over a broader period of time. And that's exactly what the folks at Mises have done here. So, just how much did life expectancy fall in 2020? Well, when the CDC released preliminary numbers of 2020's life expectancy earlier this year, many sources claim life expectancy fell off a cliff. Well, this week the tradition continued with the Daily Mail, for example, publishing this graph with a curiously truncated y axis. Yeah, it's all about perception here, right? Obviously, bumping along here, pretty much the same, all above 78.5, and then boom, let's show this little leg down, right? Oh, that looks terrible. Well, 78.5 down to 77, and by my maths, that's about 1.5, and we're looking at that from 2010 to 2020, so that's only 10 years. But let's flash down. It says if we take a longer historical view of life expectancy figures with a normal y-axis, things look a little different. And of course, let's flash all the way back to, let's say 1995. And here we see this in bar graph format. And guess what? It's pretty well flat. So notice the difference, right? Mockingbird Media, what they want to tell you, whoo, terrible, sky's falling, versus, oh, let's broaden this out a little bit. Oh, doesn't look that bad now, does it? So anyway, in 2020, life expectancy fell from 78.8 years in 2019 to 77 years in 2020. That's a drop of 2.3%. However, we also find that 2020's life expectancy of 77 years was equal to that of 2001, a period not exactly of the distant past before penicillin. Nor were the gains between 2001 and 2020 particularly impressive. Life expectancy in the US didn't budge more than 1/10 of a year between 2010 and 2019, going back and forth between 78.7 and 78.8. This means from 2001 to 2010, life expectancy increased only 2.2%. And of course, compare, for example, with the increase from 1971 to 1980, when life expectancy increased by 3.6%. So, in other words, it didn't take much for life expectancy to return to a level from 20 years prior. The past 20 years has not exactly been a period of great progress in this regard. It says a historical view also reveals that recent and ongoing attempts to compare the COVID-19 scamdemic to the flu epidemic of 1918 are hardly appropriate. From 1917 to 1918, life expectancy is estimated to have fallen by an enormous 23%, falling from 50.9 to 39.1. And here we see that graphically. Says the case of 1918 does provide a helpful reminder, however, that epidemics do not necessarily signal a departure from larger trends. By 1919, the life expectancy in the U.S. had rebounded, with the measure increasing to a new high of 60.8 in 1921. So that would only make it a couple years later, right? Says changes in age-adjusted mortality. The CDC on Wednesday also released new finalized year-end numbers for mortality in 2020. And from this data, we see changes in life expectancy and mortality were driven overwhelmingly by deaths among adults. As a new report shows, mortality from 2019 and to 2020 was virtually unchanged in the under 15 population, and for children under 5, mortality actually declined. More important still is age-adjusted mortality. Now, this shows us changes in mortality while taking into account the fact that the population is aging overall, and thus more likely to experience disease and death than is a younger population. From 2019 to 2020, age-adjusted mortality in the U.S. rose from 715.2 per 100,000 to 836.4 per 100,000. That's an increase of nearly 17%. Yet, again, the rise should hardly be panic-inducing. The rise brings age-adjusted mortality back to 2003 levels, a period not exactly in the distant past. So there we have that. This is a larger historical view also shows that recent efforts to compare COVID to the 1918 flu in terms of mortality wildly overstate the impact of the current situation. From 1917 to 1918, the age-adjusted mortality rate increased by 392 per 100,000. From 2019 to 2020, the increase was 120 per 100,000. So there we see the age-adjusted. And of course, the point here is that it was not the COVID deaths over the past 18 months are insignificant. Indeed, if we make no distinction between COVID deaths and non-COVID deaths since early 2020, it's clear more Americans have indeed been dying from all causes, and that's hardly something to celebrate or ignore. Moreover, the CDC's report is an unpleasant reminder that life expectancy in the U.S. had already but screeched to a halt in the decade leading up to 2020. This was likely due to a continued and rapid rise in obesity, rising nearly 40% from 2000 to 2018, which has in turn fueled both heart disease and diabetes. Both these conditions are factors known to substantially increase the severity of COVID-19. Never mind the fact that even if you had some level of comorbidities or things of that nature, what did they put on death certificates? COVID, COVID this, COVID that, didn't matter, right? And of course, who makes money on the back end because of that? Nevertheless, it remains important to obtain some much needed context when examining a disease which is being used to justify unprecedented increases in state power over even the most basic personal and economic activities of ordinary people. Even considering recent data on life expectancy and mortality, it remains extremely unclear why 2020's change in these metrics would justify the extreme panic and human rights violations that resulted from stay-at-home edicts and coerced medication. American citizens are nowadays subjected to a non-stop drumbeat of claims about unprecedented levels of mortality. We were even told COVID is just like the flu of 1918. And to what end? Apparently to rob people of their livelihoods if they refuse to receive a jab. Is to attempt to make pariahs of anyone who makes health decisions of which the regime does not approve. Is to continue to justify 2020's ineffectual lockdowns. Is to justify government spending at levels unprecedented in peacetime. Is to deny that natural immunity provides meaningful resistance to the disease. Yet, all this rhetoric occurs at a time when age-adjusted mortality and life expectancy is not exactly quote-unquote off the charts, if we look beyond the confines of just the last few years. All about context, folks. And of course, the Mockingbird media, they'll put these flashy graphs on there. The folks sitting in suits behind their desks at the local TV station, just rattling their gums and that to the narrative and that was handed them on their teleprompter. Nobody's going to question anything and people will just gobble it up, right? Unless you do a little digging or we get a report like this out of Mises that says, hey, let's stretch that out a little bit here and see what it really looks like. Right? I mean, we don't have to look too far back except for the smoke and mirrors and pull the wool over the eyes, the American populace, of what Biden tried to do with gas prices here as of late. Right? Same song, different verse. So, unfortunately, on this Christmas Eve, flight cancellations on Christmas Eve are upending holiday travel. And of course, we saw a bunch of this back around Thanksgiving, and I guess we probably really shouldn't be all that surprised, really. Holiday Travels received a troubling last-minute message. Major airlines are canceling flights on Christmas Eve due to staffing shortages linked to COVID-19 cases. According to Bloomberg, at least 200 flights on Friday have been canceled by United Airlines Holdings and Delta Airlines, Inc. The nationwide spike in Omicron cases this week has been a direct impact on our flight crews and the people who run our operation, United memo said, which was obtained by Clown News. United is notifying impacted customers in advance of them coming to the airport, according to the memo. We're sorry for the disruption and we are working hard to rebook as many people as possible and get them underway for the holidays. Delta said the same thing. A wave of cancellations is due to an outbreak of the Omicron variant. We apologize to our customers for the delay in their holiday travel plans, Delta said in a statement. Delta people are working hard to get them to where they need to be as quickly and as safely as possible on the next available flight. Flight cancellations due to staffing shortages have been nothing new for airlines in the last several months. Several stories listed there. People slept in airports. Get your crap together. Southwest blames cancellations on worker shortage, etc., etc. Says as of Friday morning, up to 1,900 flights worldwide had been canceled, according to FlightAware's website. And this is the latest blow for holiday travels amid the spike in COVID cases. Cases. Highlight cases. The cases don't mean squat. Tracking the coronavirus, of course, here's the maps for what it's worth. No idea who it's out of here, but anyway. Says more flight cancellations may be slated for this upcoming weekend, and if so, there will be travel pains for thousands of people who will most likely vent their rage on social media. So yeah, for those that are still left on Twitter or Facebook, I suppose there might be some hashtags that might be starting to trend, and I guess we'll have to see whether or not they allow those to trend or not. But nonetheless, last but not least, financially here this morning says rolling blackouts are spreading across Europe amid an energy crisis. And of course, like a broken record here on the broadcasts, here as of late, we've talked numerous times about the energy woes in Europe. And here we are. Now we get the rolling blackouts. Europe's energy crisis worsened this week when Kosovo introduced rolling blackouts to most of its 2 million citizens, according to Bloomberg. And on Thursday, the Kosovo Energy Distribution Services announced rolling 2-hour power blackouts for 2 million people due to an overload of its electrical grid. KEDS asked customers to reduce power given insufficient internal generation to cover consumption and the global energy crisis. The Balkan country, Europe's poorest nation, experienced a technical issue at its largest coal-fired power plant that had to shut down last month, which forced the government to import electricity at high prices. And here's Kosovo clear down here, for those that may not remember, down south of Serbia and to the west of Bulgaria, just to the northwest of North Macedonia. Says simultaneously, Serbia was forced to cut electricity to customers. Britain's network operator issued a power supply warning, and France's nuclear power outage all culminated into a perfect storm of straining the continent's grid, resulting in reduced power supplies and exorbitantly high prices. Javier Blas says no surprises in the announcement today by Kosovo of rolling 2-hour blackouts for most customers. Says it was very clear 3 months ago that the real crisis was in Eastern Europe, and particularly in the Balkans. The EU was sleeping or didn't care. So it's almost like this is planned, don't you think? Says last week, Kosovo's economy minister, Artane Rizvanoli, said the shuttering of the nation's main coal-fired power plant had worsened the energy crisis. He said power imports were extremely costly. Grid data from ENSO-E shows electricity imports from Albania, Serbia, Montenegro, and North Macedonia plunged from 750 megawatts on Wednesday to about 469 megawatts on Thursday. Jeremy Weir, CEO of commodities trading trader Trafigura Group warned that more European countries could face rolling blackouts in the event of a severe winter. 11 European associations, from steel to fertilizers to cement to paper mills, published a memo Thursday indicating energy-intensive companies are paying unbearably high energy prices that may force them to shutter operations. However, there is good news for the continent, as benchmark Dutch front-month gas plunged as much as 43% from a peak of €180 per megawatt hour to around €102 in the last several days, as a flotilla of U.S. liquefied natural gas tankers is headed to the fuel-starved continent. And we talked about that a little bit the other day. I forget how many boats are being sent across the pond at the moment, but nonetheless, we'll have to see how that shakes out. More good news that weather forecasts from Germany will turn milder, and of course, this will help keep a lid on gas prices. Europe remains caught in its worst energy crisis ever, as some relief is on the way, but the worst may not be over, as the Northern Hemisphere winter has just begun. So you think the people are going to be a little upset over there? Number one, they got all the COVID crap, lockdowns and passes and other musings and that going on. People pretty peeved about all that, so there's all sorts of protests going on all across Europe, which the Mockingbird media is not showing. Throw energy price increases on top of that, or perhaps maybe the places where some of these people work are going to have to shut down, or rolling blackouts, or worse. What do you think is going to happen to those politicians? I don't know. Frankly, I think I've seen some videos in the past where they've literally picked some of these guys up off the street when they were found and dumped them in a dumpster. Or perhaps maybe some tar and feathers might be appropriate as well. We'll have to see. Maybe we'll get some interesting reports on Twitter here in the coming days. So, outside of financial news here today, some positive news says you have the power to stop the tyranny. California school district reverses child shot mandate after thousands of parents refused to comply. And that's just it, folks. You get enough people together, like-minded, and get a whole body, an arsenal of said folks who refuse to bend the knee. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? It's like the meme, right? You got the guy with the whip, and then all the people bow down in front of him, and then one guy stands up, then two or three guys stand up, then they all stand up, and then it's the one guy who had the whip who ends up bowing down. It's exactly that. The strength is in numbers. So out of Sons of Liberty Media here says, see, you have more power over the tyrants than you think when you band together and stop complying with their unlawful edicts. The latest example of this comes out of the state of California, where a school backed down from their mandates for children to take the deadly experimental COVID shot because thousands of parents stood together and refused to comply. And that's exactly what it's going to take. Or if they don't back down, pull your frickin' kids out of the schools. Where's those tax dollars going to go now? If you got thousands of kids being yanked out of the system. Who do you think at the end of the day is going to be paying their 401ks that all of their taxes go to? The whole doggone system is going to come crumbling down around them. Kind of reminds me of the clip, right? We're going to bring the whole effing thing down. It's going to be biblical. Says out of San Diego, Matagorist has the story at the Free Thought Project. Out of San Diego, forging any legal democratic processes, multiple school districts in California began mandating the COVID-19 vaccination for children earlier this year. Set to go into effect in January, any child 16 and older who did not get the jab was banned from campus in all San Diego public schools. This authoritarian move caused a mass of backlash, and thousands of children and parents refused to comply. The refusal to get vaccinated set the stage for a showdown that was to unfold on January 24th, when the children would be kicked out of school for non-compliance. There will be no showdown, however, as a San Diego judge struck down the mandate this week, accurately pointing out that a school district has no authority to mandate medical procedures for children. So perhaps the thing to do would be to go find that bit of litigation in that was put into the record for said suit, get a copy of it, make sure you have it, and use it for our own cases anywhere else we see fit around the country. CBS 7 reports that Superior Court Judge John S. Meyer granted a writ of mandate for a lawsuit filed by the group Let Them Choose, which sought to keep the school district's COVID-19 vaccine mandate from going into effect by arguing it did not comply with state law. Meyer noted in the ruling that the school district's COVID-19 vaccine mandate cannot move forward because it conflicts with state law, which says any decision to mandate vaccines must be made at the state level and must also include a, quote, personal belief exemption, end quote, if the mandate is not imposed by the state legislature. San Diego Unified's policy did not contain this exemption. SDUSD's roadmap appears to be necessary and rational, and the district's desire to protect its students from COVID-19 is commendable. Unfortunately, the field of school vaccine mandates has been fully occupied by the state, and the roadmap directly conflicts with state law, the judge wrote in a tentative ruling. Naturally, the school district disagreed and claimed they have the right to dictate what children can and can't be injected with. For now, however, their objection is meaningless, and the children and parents who did not want to take the vaccination will no longer be forced to do so. Says, I am overjoyed. We knew that our legal argument was strong, and we brought this case on behalf of thousands of concerned parents and students, and to hear the judge say no student should be coerced into getting this jab was just a wonderful thing to hear, said Sharon McKeeman, founder of the group behind Let Them Choose. Says, as the Free Thought Project reported earlier this month, the LA Unified School District, which is the second largest school district in the country, made a similar move and mandated shots for all children aged 12 and older. Students were told they would be banned from campus on January 10th of 2022 if they failed to comply and take the shot. Now, NBC4 spoke to an attorney who is following these cases, Jennifer Kennedy, who explained that school districts do not have the authority to mandate medical procedures. And just like the San Diego School District did not have the authority to mandate the jabs, the LAUSD did not have it either. These grotesque contests and displays of treatment and candy and gifts and favors, raffles and cash prizes, including the kids to the vaccination, inducing the kids to the vaccination. Here's the problem. Kids in California cannot consent to vaccination. And she added, the LAUSD does not have the power to add a vaccine to the California school schedule, she said. You couldn't do it if you're a podunk school district, and you can't do it if you're LAUSD, the second largest district in the nation. You don't have that legal authority. Several parents and students filed lawsuits against the LAUSD over the mandate, and thousands of children remained unvaccinated in LAUSD. This line in the sand forced the school district to postpone their mandate last week after a whopping 28,000 children refused the jab. It says it is only through resistance that the change we seek will come. And as history shows us, one cannot comply their way out of tyranny. So we'll break from that there. We get the idea. The bottom line, strength is in numbers. As always, we know that. Stand up, be counted, and be firm. Draw your red line in the sand, the line that they shall not cross. Right? So aside from that, out of 100% fed up here yesterday, Ghislaine Maxwell will spend Christmas in federal jail as jury fails to reach a verdict this week. So, yeah, wonder if we'll hear of Ghislaine and her family complaining about poor conditions in jail and not getting a decent Christmas meal. But closing arguments in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial began this week, nearly 3 years after the mysterious death of Epstein in New York prison. Maxwell, 59, is charged with 6 federal counts, including sex trafficking of minors, enticing a minor to travel to engage in illegal sex acts, transporting a minor with the intent to engage in criminal sexual activity, and 3 related counts of conspiracy. And of course, she could face up to 70 years in prison if convicted on all counts. Now, the court planned a Christmas break starting Thursday, and the jury has yet to reach a verdict on the highly controversial case. Various legal experts speculated that the jury would likely reach a verdict before the court left for Christmas break. And with the court failing to reach a verdict today, Maxwell will have to spend the holiday weekend in federal prison. Legal sources connected to the case have said that Maxwell plans to cooperate with the DOJ and start naming names if convicted in order to get a lesser sentence. According to the Daily Mail, Maxwell, 59, denies all 6 charges linked to grooming underage girls for abuse by the late pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. However, the source said if she is convicted and facing up to 70 years in prison, she might cooperate with the U.S. government in exchange for a reduced sentence or better jail conditions. Now, this could be bad news for Prince Andrew and other high-profile men who hung out with Ghislaine and Epstein, the source said. It is possible she will begin to cooperate and tell what she knows in an attempt to lessen her jail term. Now, we know that the prosecutors are looking at other co-conspirators in connection with Epstein's child sex ring, and Ghislaine undoubtedly possesses information which could assist prosecutors in other cases. And if she decides to cooperate, her testimony could be devastating. Of course, she was Epstein's right-hand woman for years. Imagine what she knows. And yes. So there we have that. Poor Ghislaine. Yep, she'll have to wait till after Christmas until the jury is done deliberating. And we'll have to see how this pans out because obviously there is another trial coming up with old Ghislaine, and I think that one pertains to Ms. Jeffrey coming up. I believe that is sometime in January here. Mind you, this particular case was thought to have going to go longer than it actually did. And when this wrapped up, I think it was supposed to be like another couple weeks before that case started up. Different district, the whole kit and caboodle. So we'll have to keep an eye on this one. This might get a little interesting. So aside from that, this morning, out of American Greatness, a Lump of Coal Awards 2021, January 6th edition. So catching on to the little bit of the Christmas theme going on here for some of these guys. Aside from the scamdemic, no other issue has dominated the daily news cycle and collective fixation of the ruling class more than the alleged quote-unquote insurrection on January 6, 2021. Now, the events of that day were a gift to the Biden regime and the Dem Party, which should instantly disabuse anyone of the notion that the Capitol protest was legitimately an organic uprising instead of an inside job orchestrated by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Mayor Muriel Bowser, and the FBI, to name just a few accomplices. Now, since then, every lever of government power in D.C. has been wielded in a vengeful way against American citizens who dared to protest the rigged 2020 presidential election. The conduct of those in charge has exposed the moral depravity of the people who populate the power center of the world's greatest country, showing a stark chasm between the inherent goodness and decency of the American people and the sadistic ghouls who call the shots from the Beltway. Now, the people on this list deserve a far greater punishment than a lump of coal. And this list could be much longer, but since it's Christmas season and all, I'll be charitable. Now, this year's naughty list, January 6th version, Attorney General Merrick Garland. It's hard to see how Garland could do more damage as a Supreme Court justice than what he's doing now as the nation's top lawyer. In all honesty, Garland is more like Biden or Robert Mueller, a grandfatherly disguise to conceal the sinister actors behind the scenes. And it's actually Lisa Monaco, his deputy, who's in charge. But Garland has a title, so he deserves the lumps. And the top of this list, the former D.C. Circuit Court judge, is overseeing the largest criminal investigations in Justice Department history related to January 6th. shamelessly comparing the mostly non-violent protests that day to the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing, which resulted in the murder of 168 innocent Americans, including more than a dozen children under the age of 5. Garland has unleashed a ruthless team of line prosecutors to ruin the lives of 700 Americans and counting. His office has sought pretrial detention in at least 100 cases, successfully convincing D.C. District Court judges to deny bail to alleged insurrectionists, including several not accused of committing any violent crime. And at the same time, Garland announced he will not force thousands of convicted criminals released to home detention under emergency scamdemic rules to return to prison. What sort of bizarro world are we living in here, right? More than 14,000 hours of surveillance video captured by Capitol security cameras is highly sensitive government material, according to Garland. His office insists the footage must remain concealed from the American public. BS. Garland's prosecutors are bastardizing a vague obstruction statute to criminalize political dissent and turn January 6 trespassers into convicted felons. Now, when confronted by Representatives Tom Massey to disclose how many undercover federal agents participated in January 6th, Garland acted confused by the questions, then refused to answer. And the Justice Department is working in tandem with House Dems and the January 6th Select Committee. Last month, Garland charged Steve Bannon, a one-time Trump confidant, an influencer on the right, with 2 counts of contempt of Congress, after Bannon refused to comply with committee subpoenas. Other Trump allies, include former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, could face similar charges. Mind you, never mind Eric Holder and his gun running, where he was held in contempt, but, we'll just turn a blind eye to that. But hey, if it's the shoes on the other foot, then, yep, you're going to get charged, you're going to go get picked up. Contempt. No other attorney general, including, here we go, Eric Holder, in recent memory, has been as openly vindictive, partisan, dishonest, and hostile to the equal application of the law than Merrick Garland. Now, FBI Director Christopher Wray, one of Trump's worst appointments, and that's saying a lot, Chris Wray continues to use his unchecked power to target Republicans. In March, Wray designated January 6 as an act of domestic terror, which unleashed the full force of law enforcement against suspected domestic terrorists involved in the protest, even those accused of low-level offenses such as obstruction or, my personal favorite, parading in the Capitol building, an activity considered a constitutional right until January 6th. For nearly a year, Wray's FBI has conducted a campaign of terror against American citizens across the country. Families have awakened to pre-dawn FBI raids complete with dozens of armed agents and armored vehicles, including trucks equipped with battering rams to knock down front doors. Agents have interrogated suspects without a lawyer present, refused to present search warrants when asked, and confiscated personal items that have no relevance to what happened on January 6th. Wray's FBI has issued geofence warrants to collect cell phone data on anyone in the nation's capital on January 6th, an egregious privacy violation. FBI investigators have subpoenaed tech companies to retrieve deleted social media posts, text messages, and other personal information. So at the same time, Wray refuses to disclose how many FBI informants were deployed by the office before and during January 6th. And in September, the New York Times confirmed at least 2 confidential sources were embedded in the Proud Boys, a militia group Wray considers a domestic terror threat, months before the Capitol protest. So aside from that, they talk a little bit about the U.S. District Court as well. Justice not being blind, the United States Capitol Police as well, and other worthy recipients, D.C. Department of Corrections for torturing January 6 detainees, Representative Benny Thompson, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, for their mere existence, congressional Republicans for refusing to speak against this travesty of justice, and Donald Trump for not using his platform routinely to defend his supporters now vilified as insurrectionists. Please pray for those ensnared in this cruel, un-American prosecution, and pray for karma to catch up with everyone else. Merry Christmas. So that a piece out of American Greatness late yesterday, talking about the January 6th quote-unquote insurrection that never was, still isn't to this day. Also this morning we get Christmas Eve traditions are especially welcome this year. You know, despite the idiots over at the World Health Organization, the little clown known as Fauci, yeah, disregard those jokers. Do what you need to. Visit with family, friends, whatever. Just have a normal Christmas. Out of PJ Media, it says last year was a difficult year for my family in several ways. At the start of the pandemic, my job at the time as a church communications director became stressful, especially after I had to do most of my work from home. We had to make so many on the fly decisions and communicate them that I wound up doing something work related 31 out of 32 consecutive days. Now, the weekend, everything shut down for the scamdemic. My dad went to the hospital for blood clots in his lungs. We couldn't visit him, and one of the nurses inadvertently put his phone charger in a place where he couldn't get to it. He didn't know what was going on in the world, and he was alone. His lung cancer had returned, so he came home with hospice care and passed away 2 days later. We weren't able to have a funeral for him, and my mom's sisters weren't able to comfort her in person. Things opened back up by the summer. Thank you, Governor Brian Kemp. So obviously this must be down in Georgia. And our lives got back to as normal as they could be. By December, we were looking forward to the comfort of Christmas traditions, especially our church's Christmas Eve service, a tradition that has been part of our church from the time we began worshiping together as a congregation. The COVID-19 spike late in the year crushed those plans, so our church decided to film a Christmas Eve special, which ironically turned into a mini super spreader event with 9 of the 12 participants getting infected. Christmas Eve 2020 turned into our family watching the East Ridge Christmas Eve special on TV. We were able to participate in other parts of our Christmas Eve tradition of Waffle House for dinner, but you know what? We were together and we were grateful for that blessing. This year is much more normal, even with some life changes. A new job for me, a serious first boyfriend for my oldest niece, and welcoming the boyfriend's family into ours. But one thing we're particularly grateful for is that our church will have in-person Christmas Eve services. Of course, I invite you to join us online at 5 and 6:30 p.m. Eastern if you don't have a church home or a service to attend. Says, we've invited some family friends to join us, and some members of our family are even taking part in the service this year, lighting a special Advent candle. And of course, we'll go to Waffle House after church. Every Christmas is different, but those Christmas Eve traditions that we hold dear are even more precious this year. Since 2020 interrupted our holiday tradition, we'll cling to and appreciate the familiar this year. It's those consistent traditions that often feel like home more than anything else. And that's definitely not lost on my family in 2021. Christmas is about celebrating the birth of Jesus, but it's also about family and spending time together. The traditions we enjoy always enhance our worship and our appreciation of family. We don't idolize them, but we love them and enjoy them. No matter how you celebrate or whether you worship, no matter who's in your home or around your table, no matter what your traditions are this Christmas Eve, take time to appreciate the blessings in your life. After a couple of really rough years for a lot of people, we need opportunities to express our gratitude more than ever before. So, speaking of Christmas, there may be a gift you have yet to shop for, a gift you may want to give spontaneously at the last minute. We here at PJ Media have just a thing. Alexander Hamilton once said, "The office of a free press is to give us early alarm and put us on our guard against the encroachments of power." That's what we do here. We tell the truth so you can know what's going on in our world. And of course, they go on to state if you wish to make a contribution, you can certainly do so. But as mentioned here, the key takeaway is count your blessings at the end of the day. Be thankful for what we have. Thankful that we can still get together with family and friends. recognize that we are living in very different times, I should say, perhaps tyrannical. And there are those who would rather not allow us to gather, but we're going to do it anyway. To hell with them. It's not their call. They're not our rulers. We don't have kings. And so, anyway, that's what I would invite you to do as well. Last but not least on the morning, a piece out of the Federalist here this morning says, How Advent teaches us amid sorrow to rejoice. Says, today is the last day of Advent. What does the church teach us about sadness and joy? Just consider some of her hymns and scriptures. Says, why are these Christmas songs so sad? The question came from a little girl named Hazel. She'd been raised in a different Christian tradition with drums, guitars, and applause. But that Sunday of Advent, she was sitting with her dad in a small Catholic church among the California redwoods outside Santa Cruz. O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel. I think they're beautiful, he whispered. I chuckled when he told me what she'd asked. I never thought of it that way. Church at Advent was peaceful, yes, a quiet and contemplative place, where the noble smell of incense took the place of Christmas trees. The flicker of Advent candles replaced the blinking lights of shops and lamp posts, and we sang of the Holy Family rather than Rudolph, Santa, and Frosty. But there is a sadness in Advent that better educated Christians than I understood long before they heard the simple question Hazel asked her father. More than sadness, there is a longing so deep that for centuries in the Middle Ages, priests wore black in its presence, and still today wear purple as a sign of both their mourning for what is to come and the royal nature of our deliverer, that mourns in lonely exile here until the Son of God appear. For 4 centuries, the silent years after Malachi, final prophet of the Old Testament, and before John the Baptist, our world sat in darkness. The Lord has spoken through the prophets, and his final prophet had told of his anger. The people of Israel, he declared, had disdained his name and defiled his table. His own priests had betrayed him, choosing to please society, permitting their sins and calling good what was wicked. Malachi told not only of the Lord's anger, but also of his promise. Now, the Lord said, I am sending my messenger. He will prepare the way before me, and the Lord whom you seek will come suddenly to his temple. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to you, O Israel. The music of Advent is sad because Advent is sad. We had strayed, neglected our worship, corrupted God's temples, and blessed what was evil. But why speak in the past tense? Is there any reason to look around us, at our world, with all its bitterness and empty churches, and think any differently? Or, for that matter, was there ever any day or night where we could look around ourselves and think any differently? There was, only holy winter night, one holy winter night, when the angels lit the skies above sleepy Bethlehem, and the Lord our God was made flesh and dwelt among us. What came to be through him, the Apostle John writes, was life, and this life was the light of the human race. But again, why speak in the past tense? That winter night has not passed. Yes, mankind saw the child born in a manger, yet many of us did not know him then, and many don't know him now. Still others hated him, and they put him to death on a cross. But for all our trying, we could never give away what the Lord had given. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared, and the soul felt its worth. I love you, says the Lord, reads the first line of the last book of the Old Testament. Even for all our wanting and wantonness, our time away from Eden has been a long exile, but still he loves us. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So, this Christmas, gathering with friends and family, be joyful. He who has redeemed us, who came to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many, has come. The darkness is real, But never again will we wait 400 years for his answer. God has given his answer, and his answer is his Son, Christ the child, Christ the King. So joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room, and heaven and nature sing. Merry Christmas to all. That out of the Federalist here today. So that is what I will leave you with here on this Christmas Eve edition here on the channel. Appreciate you guys tuning in. And perhaps tomorrow, I don't know, I haven't decided yet, but I may just leave the channel up, leave a little fireplace and some tunes in the background for those wishing to periodically pop in, leave the old ticker up and let that run throughout the day. And just pop in, drop something in chat if you wish. And I don't know, maybe as I kick it off in the morning, depending on when I get up, I'm sure it'll be plenty early. May just do the old Luke 2:8 through 14 read through at the onset, just as a casual reminder of why we celebrate the season. And we'll do that. So stay tuned. Otherwise, have a very merry, blessed Christmas. Enjoy your time with family, friends, your traditions, and all of the things. And with that, I say, God bless you, take care, and have a very merry Christmas.